WWE Hall of Famer Bill Goldberg says that some Japanese girl broke his winning streak in WWE and also claims that WWE's chief content officer Paul Triple H didn't like him and that affected his booking decisions in the company. In addition to that, Goldberg has responded to the controversial Bret Hart topic when it comes to the kick that ended the Hitman's career. John Laurenitis submits a new filing related to the ongoing WWE lawsuit involving Vince McMahon, WWE, and a former employee with serious allegations against Laurenitis, McMahon, and WWE. We have the ratings for this week's edition of AEW Dynamite and Rampage that were both live on Wednesday nights on TBS and TNT. An update when it comes to the Continental Championship in AEW, with Tony Khan explaining the new rules that come with the championship. Speaking of Tony Khan, he's opened up on a possible streaming deal for AEW. He's also provided an update on Kenny Omega's health, and also we got more details on Jon Moxley's ongoing absence from All Elite Wrestling. Hey guys, welcome back to Wrestling News 365. Hope everyone is doing very well. As always, there are plenty of news stories to get into in the world of professional wrestling. Let's start off talking about Bill Goldberg and his comments that have certainly got a lot of people on social media talking. Now, Bill Goldberg has given an interview where he has detailed the backstage issue between himself and WWE's Chief Content Officer, Paul Triple H Levesque. Now, in an interview with Tim Green on Nothing Left Unsaid, Goldberg opened up about several topics, including his real-life animosity with the game. Goldberg starts by pointing out displeasing items from his WWE run that, from his perspective, were directly related to Triple H not liking him, including when it came to Asuka surpassing his undefeated winning streak. Take a look.
Well, a girl beat my winning streak.
What's that? A girl what?
Beat my undefeated streak.
Oh, I didn't know that. What's the story there?
Yeah, I can't even remember. Asuka is her name. It's some Japanese girl. And they touted her as being the one to have the longest winning streak. And it just so happened that culminated when I got there, right? And then it just so happened that every single wrestler uses the spear in their moves, right?
Yeah, that's for sure.
Pretty ironic that happened when I got there, right? So that's how they do.
Did something happen when you got there that you think caused the rub, where they wanted to change the story? Was there one thing, or do you think it was just kind of...
No, the fact that I didn't get along with Paul Levesque, which is Vince's son-in-law, I think had everything to do with it.
Now, when it comes to Goldberg as well, he went on to say that he felt his contentious relationship with Triple H was the cause, saying, quote, "I think a lot of that between Hunter and myself was real. We had an interaction when I was at WCW, leading the charge in New York at a press event. So I hurt myself, and I know some people that were friends that worked with me were talking to him when he was working at WWE." Going on to describe the moment that he really wanted to rip Triple H's face off, Goldberg said, quote, "And he made a comment while I was at home, and I remember it was like yesterday, and from that second he said I was tanking it or faking it or something, and I wasn't there for the demise of WCW. How could I? So from then on, I wanted to rip his face off. So we had a confrontation prior to me signing with the WWE. Ironically, we were represented by the same agents, so it made the situation quite uncomfortable once I signed with the WWE." Now, in addition to that, he's also spoken about Bret Hart, which we'll get to in just a second. But let's talk about the streak ending when it comes to Asuka surpassing Goldberg's undefeated streak. Now, this took place during Asuka's run in NXT from sort of 2015 to 2017, around that period of time. Now, when Asuka actually surpassed the winning streak, this is what she tweeted out way back when. This was on May 24th, 2017. She said, quote, "I respect Goldberg so much. He is amazing. I am honored to be the undefeated champion with the longest streak in WWE history. Hashtag WWE, hashtag WWE NXT. Now, seemingly at the time, Bill Goldberg didn't have a problem with his milestone being surpassed. He actually responded on Twitter at the time. This was a day later. This was on May 25, 2017. And he said, "The streak is in very good hands. Hashtag congrats," and actually retweeted Asuka's post at the time as well. Now, I mentioned when it comes to Goldberg, of course, one name he's tied to in infamy, I suppose, is Bret the Hitman Hart. And the Hitman hasn't been shy about naming his problems with the WWE Hall of Famer in the past. And Goldberg has addressed his relationship with Bret Hart, sharing his honest thoughts on Hart's comments about him. Now, a botched super kick from Goldberg at WCW Starrcade in 1999 notably resulted in a number of issues for Bret Hart, including a severe concussion that forced Hart to step away from the ring. Bret Hart has voiced his issues with Goldberg on numerous occasions since the botched move. Now, speaking on the same program, Tim Green's Nothing Left Unsaid show, Goldberg gave his current thoughts on the situation, noting that he can only apologize so many times. He explained, quote, "They put us together and I did learn from the guy. I wouldn't trade that for the world. Then we had a match and unfortunately during the match something went wrong and I kicked him in the head and it was very stiff and it was an accident. I never maliciously would try to hurt anyone. Let me rephrase that. I would never hurt anyone in a situation like that where they give me their trust, because wrestling is like a dance. You can't perform properly if both people aren't doing their thing, and I didn't do the thing right and he caught it in the end and it ended his career and I've never lived it down. And I suppose, Tim, you could probably speak on this more than anybody. You know me. You've known me in situations where I had to fight Fralic just about every day to survive, and I'm not a malicious person. And I would never take advantage of anybody, especially in a physical sense like that. And so it was a complete accident, but to this day he thinks that I either did it on purpose or I was so horrible at what I did that it just happened." So that's the Bret Hart story. I've heard it for 15 years and I've heard about him bitching and moaning about me kicking him in the head, and you know, I can only say I'm sorry so many times and I can only be remorseful for so long. So that's where we are. So what do you make of Bill Goldberg's comments about Asuka, about Triple H, about Bret Hart? Where do you sit on Goldberg? Would you like to see him get one more match? He's pined for a retirement match since his last WWE run. Let me know your thoughts and reaction to all of it in the comments section below. Now, John Laurenitis, a bit of an update on John Laurenitis, the former Executive Vice President of Talent Relations, when it pertains to this lawsuit against him, Vince McMahon, and WWE from a former WWE employee. Now, John Laurenitis made a new filing regarding the lawsuit that was filed against Vince McMahon, WWE, and himself. On January 25, 2024, a lawsuit was filed by former WWE employee Janelle Grant, and while much of the attention has been on the sexual trafficking and abuse allegations against Vince McMahon, there were 3 defendants named: McMahon, WWE as a company, and John Laurenitis. Now, in an update, PW Insider is reporting that Laurenitis filed a waiver of service on March 20 before the United States District Court of Connecticut. Now, this means he's informed the court that he is aware of the lawsuit, and per PW Insider, quote, he is waiving that he needs to be served with the lawsuit personally and has tested that he will respond within 60 days as of March 15. Now, so far, Laurenitis is the only defendant to have acknowledged the lawsuit before the court. John Laurenitis' lawyer has claimed that Laurenitis was a victim of McMahon as well. Now, it was reportedly confirmed via the Wall Street Journal that the party being referred to as WWE Superstar in the lawsuit is Brock Lesnar, and reportedly confirmed by Front Office Sports that WWE Corporate Officer number 1 in the lawsuit is Nick Khan, WWE Corporate Officer number 2 is Brad Blum, WWE Corporate Officer number 3 is Stephanie McMahon, and WWE Corporate Officer number 4 is Brian Nurse. So, of course, we get any more details on that lawsuit or any updates on it, we'll let you know in a future video. Now, let's talk about the ratings for AEW Dynamite this past Wednesday. Of course, it was a big show in Toronto, Ontario, Canada, headlined by that TNT Championship I Quit match between Adam Copeland and Christian Cage. And this week's AEW Dynamite was actually followed by a rare live episode of AEW Rampage, and the show retained the audience from last week's big business event as well. Now, according to WrestleNomics, Dynamite was viewed by 800,000 viewers overall, representing no significant change in viewership from last week, while the 18 to 49 demographic also maintained from last week, scoring a 0.27 rating for the night. When it comes to AEW Rampage, we also have the ratings for that as well, which you can see on the screen right there. Now, when it comes to Rampage, it did actually fantastic numbers outside of its usual slot, with 541,000 viewers tuning in, a 65% rise in overall viewership. The 18 to 49 demographic for Rampage was a 0.18, which was also a 64% rise from last week. Now, when it comes to the quarter-hour ratings, of course, these come courtesy of WrestleNomics, so be sure to check out their Patreon service and subscribe to that. Now, when it comes to the highest rated segment of the two shows, that was actually the beginning of Dynamite, which saw Mercedes Moné interact with Willow Nightingale, as well as Julia Hart and Sky Blue. Chris Jericho's loss to Hook was the lowest rated segment of Dynamite, while the lowest rated segment of the night overall was Katsuyori Shibata's match with Kevin Matthews on AEW Rampage. Now, the show was notable for featuring two title changes, as AEW TNT champion Christian Cage was dethroned by his former best friend Adam Copeland in a bloody and brutal I Quit match that actually ran on to AEW Rampage. The AEW Continental Champion Eddie Kingston also lost his title to the Rainmaker Kazuchika Okada, who is now just the second champion in the title's fledgling history. Now, Rampage was live due to TBS's coverage of the NCAA March Madness tournament currently taking place, as a second-round college basketball will be occupying Rampage's usual time slots. There will also be no AEW Collision on Saturday as a result of the tournament. So what do you make of those numbers? Let me know your thoughts and reaction to that in the comment section below. Did you expect more, better, or worse? And what can AEW do? I ask this every week, but I'll still ask it now. What can AEW do to get closer to that 1 million mark that they haven't hit in quite a long time when it comes to AEW Dynamite? Now, speaking of AEW and that Continental Championship, of course, we've got a brand new Continental Champion in Kazuchika Okada, but what are the rules now? Because, of course, Eddie Kingston is no longer a Triple Crown champion. Now, after Eddie Kingston lost the AEW Continental Championship, Tony Khan has clarified the future of the title and how it will be defended. Now, after winning the Continental Classic tournament to become the inaugural AEW Continental Champion, Eddie Kingston went on to successfully defend the Continental Crown against Bryan Danielson. Now, the Continental Crown was made up of the New Japan Strong Openweight Championship, as well as the Ring of Honor World Championship and the AEW Continental Championship. However, when Eddie Kingston defended and lost only the Continental Championship against Kazuchika Okada on the March 20 edition of Dynamite, it left some fans confused. Now, thankfully, Tony Khan has now clarified in a new interview with Comic Book, saying, quote, "Whoever is the champion going into the Continental Classic, they will put up the title going into the Continental Classic. They will have the opportunity to retain it by winning the tournament. The Continental title will be defended under Continental rules for the rest of the year. No outside interference, nobody allowed at ringside. Whoever is the champion coming out of Full Gear, they will defend the title in the Continental Classic, and at World's End will determine who will be the Continental Champion." Now, the Continental Crown aspect seems to be specific to Kingston, who happened to be holding his Ring of Honor and New Japan titles ahead of the Continental Classic tournament and put them on the line for the inaugural 2023 tournament. Now, while Eddie Kingston may have suffered a loss to Okada on Dynamite, he still retains both his Ring of Honor and New Japan titles as they were not on the line. Kingston will next defend his Ring of Honor World Championship against Mark Briscoe at the upcoming Ring of Honor pay-per-view Supercard of Honor during WrestleMania weekend. That's set to take place on Friday, April 5th in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. So what do you make of those rules? And what do you make of the amount of titles that are currently in AEW at the moment? Are there too many? Are there not enough? Was it just right? Let me know your thoughts about that as well. Now, Tony Khan has also opened up on the latest when it comes to a streaming deal for AEW involving AEW pay-per-views, TV shows, and possibly exclusive content as well. With every wrestling company seemingly having its own streaming service and the news that WWE will be partnering with Netflix in 2025, many fans have wondered if and when AEW will find a home on a streaming service. Now, AEW currently airs its shows under the Warner Bros. Discovery umbrella, which also owns the Max streaming service, formerly known as HBO Max, and many have wondered if that will be the future home of AEW, especially when the company's media rights deal expires later this year. AEW President Tony Khan was asked about this during a recent interview with Comic Book Nation, where he revealed that getting AEW on Max is a long-term goal for him. He said, quote, "We're actively negotiating right now," Khan said. "Something I would be really excited about would be bringing AEW to Max, and it's something I think we've talked about. It just needs to make sense for everybody. I think when we find a streaming home for AEW, that's going to be a long-term plan, and given that we're up at the end of this year, I think one of the reasons I've wanted to wait is I think when we get the streaming contract figured out, it should be a long-term solution for fans so that everybody who's waited so long to see this, I mean, it's amazing what we have accomplished in 5 years." Now, Khan explained that the back catalogue of AEW programming, as well as the Ring of Honor library he purchased in 2022, will play a part in how he wants to negotiate a streaming deal. He added that airing the company's big events live on the platform, with All In being used as an example, is another aspect that works in their favor. So where do you think AEW is going to land when it comes to a streaming service? Do you expect it to be on Max? Do you expect the Ring of Honor library to land on Max? Do you think it's just a negotiating chip that Tony Khan is waiting to utilize when he's in these negotiations with WBD as well? Let me know your thoughts about that. Now, Kenny Omega. What's the latest when it comes to Kenny Omega? Well, Tony Khan has provided a bit of an update when it comes to the cleaner. Now, AEW President Tony Khan has opened up about how former AEW World Champion Kenny Omega is doing and if a return might be on the cards for him. Omega, of course, was taken out of action indefinitely at the end of last year after being diagnosed with diverticulitis, an illness that could have been fatal had Omega not seen doctors when he did. Omega has since been spotted on Twitch, where he's been streaming video games and talking wrestling, and seems in high spirits, which has got a lot of people feeling good about seeing him return to the ring. Tony Khan has shared this optimism with the fans, as he stated in this interview of Comic Book, that while he would love to see Omega back in action, he doesn't want to rush things. He said, quote, "We miss Kenny Omega very much," Khan said. "Hopefully he will be back with us soon, and certainly I think the fans will be clamoring for his return, and there will be a massive ovation if and when Kenny Omega does come back to AEW. I don't want to put any pressure on it. He was in a really bad way, and I don't want to put a timetable or try to rush him back. But I'm optimistic we'll see Kenny Omega again, and certainly it's something for all the fans to look forward to. I think everybody's going to go crazy when Kenny does come back, which I think we're all very optimistic about." Now, when Omega does come back, he will have to deal with the drama of the Young Bucks, who publicly fired him from the Elite on an episode of AEW Dynamite earlier this month after they said he was not making any of his dates for no good reason, and replaced him with his New Japan Pro Wrestling rival, the Rainmaker himself, Kazuchika Okada. Do you think we're headed to an Omega-Okada rematch, this time inside of an AEW ring? When do you think that would take place? Finally, Jon Moxley. We haven't seen him in a few weeks, and many people have been wondering why. Now, according to Sean Ross Sapp of Fightful Select, Jon Moxley has been uncharacteristically absent from AEW television as of late, but nothing of concern is afoot. Many have been wondering and asking why Moxley and Castagnoli, that being Claudio Castagnoli, had not been included in the AEW Tag Team Title Tournament, especially after recently defeating FTR. Now, Fightful say they can't speak to booking decisions in particular, but they did learn that this time off was actually planned ahead of time, and the duo were not going to be available during the tournament, hence why they weren't included. Now, Jon Moxley does have upcoming bookings in Mexico next week as part of the CMLL AEW crossover, as well as Japan in the following week as well, when the heart of the tournament would be taking place. His match in Mexico was planned well over a month ago as well, and by then he would have not been available to participate in the tournament. So that's apparently why, because Moxley has some planned timed off. But there you go, guys. The latest pro wrestling news for you. Be sure to smash a like on the like button. Be sure to subscribe, bottom right hand corner. As always, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below, and I'll speak to you again very, very soon. Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.